What up, nerds? I'm Bryson. You can call me Bam, and this is CTF and Cigars by Bam CTF, where I light up a cigar, talk about CTFs, hacking, and other security-related topics. So today we're going to talk about the CTF. We did a CTF this week on Thursday, CTF and Cigars 2021. Huntress Labs and Try Hack Me sponsored me, provided some of the prizes. We had a lot of fun, and I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to start off talking about kind of the technology behind it, and then I'm going to go through some of the challenges. So this is actually going to be a multi-episode thing going through the different servers. We had 10 different servers. It was a King of the Hill style CTF, so we'll get to that. But before I get to all the hacks, I'm going to do what I always do, and I'm going to light up a cigar. So today I'm smoking it's a Cao Flathead V660. I had one of these last night, and I took a few notes on it. So it's got a very musty, sort of earthy odor or aroma with sort of grassy undertones. And when you first light it up, that first third, it's a bit spicy. There's some cedar, a little bit of cream, and it's got a real sort of complicated, earthy, floral arrangement to it. As you start smoking, and as it heats up a bit, it gets a bit more peppery. Some of that earthiness, it gets a little bit sweeter, and you get a little bit of a sweet finish. And then on the retro hell, you get some of that pepper and earth. Once you get through that first third and you get to that second third, that spicy cedar notes, they kind of fade away a little bit, and you get sort of an espresso, a little bit of like a sugary kind of sugar cane, and it gets very creamy. That's one of the things I really enjoyed about this cigar. It's a Gordo. It's 6 inches, and it's got a 60 gauge. This is a really large gauge cigar, and you really get a mouthful of smoke with this. When you get to that second third, that smoke becomes really creamy, and it's just a mouthful of creamy smoke, and it was actually a very enjoyable experience. And you get to that final third, all those flavors really combine. You get sort of a dark espresso, a little bit of sweet cream, and you still have a little bit of a hint of that floral aroma from before, and some of that black pepper. So this is it's a Cao Flathead V660 CARB. It's got a Connecticut broadleaf wrapper, a Connecticut Habano binder, Nicaraguan Ligero, and a Dominican Pelado Cubano filler. So let's go ahead and get this lit up here. So when you light your cigar, you always want to start with just sort of heating up the foot a little bit. You don't want to get the flames right on the cigar if you can avoid it. Just kind of heat that up, and then we'll light it. All right. A large gauge. This thing takes a minute to get lit all the way and get it lit evenly. You want to try to make sure you get it lit evenly so it burns evenly all the way through. Yep, it's pretty good. Get a lot of that, some of that cedar, that pepper, and just a little bit creamy. All right, so before we jump into the hacks, just want to talk about something a little bit serious, a little bit personal. So I mentioned this before a few weeks ago. I just wanted to mention this again. This is Addie. She is my ex-wife's daughter. Last year, she had a couple of seizures, was diagnosed with epilepsy, and then while they were checking her out to figure out what was causing the epilepsy, they found a tumor in her head. So this would be my kid's little sister. Anyway, so she's going through chemo right now. She's spending a week out of every month in the hospital for the year. So if you feel so inclined to help the family out with those medical bills, because cancer can be very expensive, there is a GoFundMe, and I've got the link there on the page. You should be able to see that. So if you feel so inclined, there's that. and let's jump into the hacks. So for the CTF, I normally in the past, I've always done Jeopardy style CTFs, and I've usually used CTFD. I love CTFD, but I wanted to try something different that I haven't done before. So I wanted to do a King of the Hill style CTF. And so I looked around at different platforms, and unfortunately there aren't really a lot of great platforms already out there that have the King of the Hill style scoring already built into it. So I found this FB CTF, and I liked the way it looked. It looked really nice, and it did the King of the Hill style scoring really well. Unfortunately, the performance wasn't great, and it didn't have very many features. I mean, it was very limited in the features. It did what it needed to do, but you couldn't do things like users couldn't change their password. I mean, something basic like that kind of gives you an idea of what we were missing. So overall, I was not happy with the platform. I don't think I will use it again unless I absolutely have to. But we did manage to get it to work. We had some technical difficulties early on, but just want to talk a little bit more about FBCTF and how I got it set up. So here's the Git repo. You can Google it. You can find FBCTF pretty easily. You know, there's this kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like. So it has this map back here, and as you play each flag. So in this case, since we were just doing, you can see here, see these countries with these little flags here. So these are countries that have been captured. So that was kind of how that worked. The servers were randomly assigned countries, and as you looked up on the map and you saw there were 10 different countries that were highlighted, those were the servers. And as you got root on one of those, you would get start accumulating points. Okay, this thing didn't light well. I think I brought it out here with me this morning, and it's been sent out here in the cold. Shouldn't have brought it out here too early. Okay, so that's kind of how that looks. There is a quick setup guide here. Now, none of that worked. So here's the problem with FBCTF. If you look back through the repo, you can see the most recent commits were 3 years ago. This has not been maintained. They've dropped support for it. They don't maintain it anymore. And when I tried going through, I tried setting it up manually. I tried using Docker. Everything I did, I kept running into dependency hell, because it's dependent on a lot of stuff that's old and no longer supported. And in order to get it to work, I would have had to go back and compile lots and lots of different libraries manually by source from old repos. For example, it was dependent on Node.js 6.0. The current version is 15 something. So anyway, so you get an idea of kind of the issues I ran into with that. The way I managed to eventually get it working, I looked around and I found somebody actually had a VMware image. So I downloaded that, and this is on CyberGuild, cyberguild.org. Downloaded that, made a few tweaks, and then uploaded that custom image to AWS, and then configured it from there. And that's kind of where all of that was hosted. As far as the configuration side on FBCTF, here's their wiki. Let's take a quick look at the admin guide. So this is what the admin side looks like. You guys never saw this. This is where I spent most of my time. But over here, there's the different levels. So FBCTF does support different types of gameplay. So it will do the Jeopardy style game. It'll do like a quiz style. So there's levels. There's the quizzes. So there's questions and answers. There's flags where you can do where you're actually finding a flag on the server. And then the bases, that would be the King of the Hill style. So for the bases, let me switch over to one of the servers here. So you can see there's this file in temp. It's called temp underscore or score underscore points. So essentially, to capture the server, you just needed to put your team name in this file. And there was a scoring agent running on the server. So let's see, we're in the root directory. Yeah, it's this scorebase.py, And I just used, again, the one that came with FBCTF. They had one available, for example, or as an example, it's actually written in Python 2. But yeah, it reads the file. It runs a web server on port 12345, and that's where that works. So if I were to get that, you can see it returns a JSON file with the team name. So that's kind of how that worked. And then another component of that. Oh wait, let's go back to the terminal. In the root directory there, or of every server, there was a services file, and then that was a list of services that you needed to maintain in order to keep scoring. So if any of these services went down, scoring for that server would stop. And so for that, I used Nagios. So in past life, in the 25 whatever years I've been in IT, I've used Nagios before for network monitoring. And here we go. This is kind of what the Nagios server looks like. We can look at the services. So most of the servers are shut down. I've turned a couple things on, and what you can see here, so like this dot1.evalcorp.com. So that was one of the services that are the servers, and then I've got a list of services for that, and we can see that they're all okay. On DOT2, we can see that the dawn of time is offline, and that's got a critical. The HTTP, it was given a warning. I didn't really worry about that because the HTTP check, the web server on this one, it didn't like the way it was formatted, but it was set up as long as it wasn't a critical, you were still getting points. So I didn't worry about modifying the check HTTP thing here. So real quick, just about Nagios. Let me log into that server. Can't believe I forgot to log into that ahead of time. Give me a second here. Need to get that IP address. I think it was that. There we go. Okay, so let's go to, I think it's user local Nagios etc. All right, so this is where the main Nagios config is. So if we look at the Nagios config, it's got a list of other configs that it loads. So that's where that comes in, and this is where most of the stuff I did. So this was a video game themed CTF. So yeah, all right, just making sure you guys are seeing what I'm seeing here. Okay, yeah, so it's a video game themed CTF. So all the servers were hosting a video game. The basic scenario was that Eval Corp is an evil video game making company, and Foo Society, which I've used them in the past, has recruited you to teach them a lesson. So Foo Society is already in. They've already got some rootkits, and they've got some stuff on the servers, and they want you to go in and just kind of screw things up a bit more. Anyway, so that was the scenario. So these were the games and the configs for each of those. We can look at those. They're in the objects directory. So this is all standard kind of Nagios config. We'll take a look at just one of these. So I'm doing Dawn of Time, so we'll look at that. So with Dawn of Time, we just set up the servers. Really just need the host names here. Just setting up the template for the host, all kind of standard stuff, and then go through and define each service with a check. So there's a number of check scripts that come with Nagios. I was just able to use those. So this one, it just checks to see if a TCP port is open, and then this is, of course, is the port number. So Dawn of Time runs on port 4000, for example. Same thing with HTTP. There's just a check HTTP command. And then also just checking SSH was up, so there's just a check SSH. So there's just those were how those were set up. But then the important part was this event handler. So I wrote an event handler. I just called it disable host, and we'll take a quick look at that. Let's see, that was in the libexec directory. So this is set up as a sysv kind of style script. So it's very similar to how sysv works. I actually just copied the check HTTP script and then modified it. So I didn't worry about the comments. So you'll see there's some comments in here that don't make sense for what we're actually doing. Just ignore the comments. But essentially what this does is it, whenever, with the event handler in Nagios, whenever the status of the service changes, so it goes from, say okay to warning or to critical, for example, then it will call this script and it passes it the status as a variable. So what we're doing here is we're checking that status, that variable that's passed to it, using case. So if it's okay, it then calls this enable host with the second variable. So the first variable passed is the status. The second variable is going to be the host name. So it calls that, and then this is just some FBCTF hacks. Because it's using memcached, which caches your database queries, and well, caches some things. But in order to get, so what I'm doing here is I'm actually directly modifying the database to disable a server if a service is down. And we'll take a look at that real quick in a second. And then I'm just flushing memcached so that those changes take effect immediately. So the actual scripts that then did the work, let's see, they're in the event handles. So I've got an enable host and a disable host. And this is super simple. That server's down, so the password doesn't matter. Don't use it anywhere else. It doesn't even exist anymore. So there's a password that you can't do anything with. Have fun with that. But yeah, so it logs into my MySQL. And all it does is it sets active equals 1 if we're enabling. So this is the enable host, where the description is. And so when I set up FBCTF, I set up the description to be the server name. Or if it was the disable host, it set active to 0, and it did the memcached. I did a few hacks here. I was trying to do some debugging during live while things were breaking. But yeah, that's pretty much how the scoring would work then. So if you got root, what you wanted to do is get in and start cleaning up the holes behind you. So however you got in, you want to try to make sure other people can't get in, because you not only need to be root, but you need to be the only one who's root. So you need to keep other people out. So there was cleaning up some back doors that existed, maybe doing some patching, that sort of thing. So that's kind of what the CTF was all about. All right, so now let's actually look at some of the challenges. So let's see, the scenario you were given. Let's see, did I update the DNS? I did. All right, so we were given this domain name, evilcorp.com. So you shouldn't be able to access it. It's just open to me right now, but it's got a list of game servers. So this is the Evil Corp gaming server list, and these are the games that we had. So we had Assault Cube, which is an FPS, Crossfire, which is another FPS, Dawn of Time, which is a MUD. A MUD is a command line multi-user dungeon. This is from old school internet gaming. NetTrek, which is also old school internet gaming. NetTrek, they claim to be the first team-based internet game that existed. So, and if you were watching our stream, so we were live streaming throughout the entire CTF on Thursday, and if you were watching the stream, you saw us kind of playing NetTrek for a little bit. It's got a little bit of a learning curve, but it actually didn't take that long before we had people running around, flying around the screen. So NetTrek, it is a Star Trek themed game. But yeah, flying around doing some dogfights. So that was a lot of fun. So, all right, this is Evil Corp. Now, before I'm gonna show you how to get into the evilcorp.com web server here, and then these are the other targets, and I'm gonna look at the Dawn of Time servers as well. But before I get into that, I wanted to show you there was a really, really easy way to get root on pretty much all the boxes. And it was on this server here. So this DOT2, Dawn of Time 2, evilcorp.com. Let's take a look at that server. Now, since this was a King of the Hill, I tried to make it really easy to get root. And I tried to give you several easy ways in. So when I show you this and you think, that seems too easy. That's why I was hoping that the intent was that you could get in and then you guys kind of create complexity by you know, locking things down and that sort of thing. So that was the goal there. All right, so we've got our server. Let's go ahead and start scanning it. All right, so we'll just do, all right, let's log out of this one and let's just do an nmap on that server and see what ports are open. All right, this should just take a second, but what we're going to find, of course, the ports that are required, we've got Dawn of Time, we've got SSH, there's a web server, and then we've also got this port 3000, which is running GetT. So GetT is a Get repo. So it's a sort of like GitHub. Let's pull that up. Got to find my, got too many browser windows open. Give me a second here. Gonna pull the right one up. All right, so let's check that out. So that is, all right, it's dot2.evalcorp.com, port 3000. There we go. That loads up with GetT. So there's not much to see here, but we can register. So let's just create a user. I'll call him user. I may have done this already when I was testing it. So, and give it a password. Let's register that account. Oh, I've already done that. Let's try a different user. Okay, there we go. So we're registered. We created a new user. Let's go ahead and explore and see what's here. So we've got one repo created by BAM, yours truly, and this is the Dawn of Time source code. Actually, you know, Dawn of Time is a pretty old mud. It took me a while to find the source code. The author of it, their site recently went down. Like, I think it was still up like a year ago, but I think they haven't made updates in like a decade. So they eventually took their site down. But I managed to find a copy of the source code. We've got that. Now, if we look right here, so there was a recent commit and it was called oops. So let's see what that commit was. So it looks like someone accidentally uploaded some SSH keys and then they removed them from the repo. And believe it or not, this SSH key will work to get you into almost all of the servers. So this would have gotten you in. And if we look here, we've got a username root at dot.evalcorp.com. Let's try that out. I've already saved this this key. So let's go back to our terminal. All right, let's see. This was, where did I put that? I think I called it temp. And let's try root, see what we get. Oh, look at that. We're in. We have root. It was that easy to get into this box. Fantastic. Yeah, so that was the easy way in. And while that the root may not have worked on all of the servers, let's try DOT1. Nope, didn't work on DOT1. But let's try EC2 users. So if you did a little bit of recon, you would have figured out that this was on Amazon. So EC2 user, it did work, is the default user for Amazon Linux. So between EC2 user and Ubuntu, using that SSH key, you could have easily gotten in to most of the servers. And then that default user on these servers has sudo privileges. And once again, I'm root. So DOT1, DOT2, both of those you could have got in that way. I think it worked on evalcorp.com as well. Let's take a look. Yep, it did. And I'm root. So yeah, that was the easy mode. If you found that key, you could have got into all the servers. Of course, then you would have wanted to remove it from your authorized keys to kind of lock that down. And then you need to move on to other ways of getting in. So let's go back to evilcorp.com. And let's see what is this is hosting. So there's a web page here. We scroll all the way down to the bottom. We can see that this is powered by Bloodit. So if we do a little bit of searching on Bloodit, we can see there are some CVEs out there. There's 2019 there were some code execution vulnerabilities related to image uploads. This is the one I think that we're going to use. So there's the CVE. Let's now switch over to Kali and let's see what we can do with that. So let's start up Metasploit. And as it turns out, there's actually a Metasploit module for this. So let's search for Bloodit. There it is. So we're going to use this. So this is the exploit that we were looking at before. Let me copy that. All right, so we're going to use that. Oh, okay. My paste went a little crazy there. All right, so we're going to use that exploit. Let's look at our options. All right, so we need a Bloodit user and a Bloodit password. So this is an authenticated exploit, or vulnerability. We need to be authenticated to the website in order to actually make use of this exploit. So we need a username and password. So there's some ways we could do that. We could try brute forcing. That's actually what we're going to try to do. But if you tried brute forcing, you would discover that Bloodit does have some brute force protection, and so we need a way to bypass that. So let's go back to our Bloodit CVEs. There was actually another vulnerability for Bloodit that was useful here, and let me see if it's listed. Yeah, bypass something. I think that's the one. Here we go. So there was a vulnerability in version 3.9.2 that would allow someone to bypass the brute force protection. So we can, let's see, I think there's a write-up here. There's a discussion on it. I think there's even some source code. Yeah, here we go. We got a proof of concept. So there's our brute force protection bypass. So if let's go back to Kali. So I've got that script. And I made some small modifications to it. Let's see, here it is. We've got bloodit.py. I modified it a bit just to read from the rocku.txt, but pretty much left everything else the same. So with the way this brute force brute force protection bypass works, and I apologize if it's a little noisy. I've got a neighbor's dog barking, and a FedEx truck just drove by. It's just one of the side effects of smoking a cigar while I'm doing this. I've got to do it outside. Anyway, so the way this the brute force protection bypass works, it's basically comes down to this: X forwarded for. So if you're not familiar with what X forwarded for, it's a way to identify the original source IP address in HTTP if you're passing through a proxy. So if your web traffic is being proxied, the web server. Usually the web server is getting the IP address of whoever's making the request from the actual IP header of the packet. But if your request is going through a proxy, that IP header is going to show the IP address of your proxy server. So everything going through the proxy, you can't actually see who it's originating from. So if this is, say, a load balancer or some kind of proxy or that you have on in your environment, what you typically want to do is enable some kind of header. Usually it's X forwarded for. Different vendors will use something different, like X client IP or true client IP, that sort of thing. But essentially it's a way for the web server to read that and see, okay, this is actually the true IP address. Has to be configured at your proxy to forward that on. So the way the brute force protection was working, it was taking the IP address from the web server, and the web server by default is going to read X forwarded for, and it's going to report that as the originating IP. So what we're doing now, there's no checks in the server to really verify that IP address is an IP address. And so what we can do is, since we're already trying multiple passwords, we've got a field that's different every time we send a request, where we're just putting that in the X forwarded for field. So for every request, the web server sees it coming from a different IP address. So if we take that and we just run this script, give that a minute. All right, so this will take a few minutes. I tried to keep the passwords towards the top of the list to make this a little bit easier. And while that's running, let's take a look at another server. So this is on the main web server, evalcorp.com. Let's see, the two others I wanted to look at today, that was DOT2, which you saw had the SSH key, and there was DOT1. Now, somebody did manage to get in and get root on DOT1, and they changed some things. They kind of locked it down a bit. So I had to go back and redo some of the vulns this morning. Hopefully I got them all. But yeah, we can see this is a WordPress site. There actually are some vulnerabilities in the WordPress site. I don't have any proof of concepts ready for those, but I did see somebody had dropped in a shell, so somebody did make use of that. If you actually take a look, let's take a look at the comments here, and then we look at the page source. Let's see, somewhere in here. Yeah, so we look around, we'll eventually find this reference to WP Discuss. This is a WordPress plugin, and there is a vulnerability related to that. So you can look that up, kind of look at how that's exploited. I didn't put the proof of concept together today, so I'll cover that one next week. But that's one way to get into this. Something else we can do. I know there actually is a existing backdoor shell on this. I actually left one in place, so we're going to do a quick scan with GoBuster. And actually, I did that ahead of time because it takes a few minutes. But I'll just show you the command that I ran. So I'm using GoBuster, using the dir command, gave it a word list, and I'm on Kali. So Kali comes with word list in user share word lists. There is this dirbuster directory, and I use just this directory list 2.3 small.txt file. Specify the URL, which was .1.evalcorp.com, and then the extensions I was looking for PHP pages. And as you can see here, it found this backdoor.php that was already there. Okay. So that's one way to get into that server. We'll come back to that. Our scan we were running on evalcorp finished, and it gave us a password of Miguel. So we found our password, username admin, password Miguel. So we're trying to use that. All right. Sorry, I was sharing the wrong screen. I got to pay better attention to that. Let me Let me go back to this and show you what I was just looking at. Make sure that's showing up. Nope, that's the wrong screen again. There we go. That's the right one. Okay, sorry about that. Right, so here's the command that I ran. Okay, you can actually see the command now, just using GoBuster to find, and then here's the results. So typical WordPress stuff, but then we've got this backdoor.php. So that was on the dot1.evalcorp.com. It was already there. I mentioned when this whole thing started that there were already some backdoors that existed. So that was already there. Now going back to where we were a minute ago, evalcorp.com, we've got username and password here. So our brute force protection bypass worked. We were able to brute force that. So now we can go back to Metasploit and start filling in our options here so we can see if this blooded exploit works. So we need to set the blooded user. So we'll call that admin. And then we'll set, let's see, it was blooded pass, I believe. Yep. That was Miguel. We need to set our host. So that should be the IP address of the site. I don't have it, but I can enter the domain name and it's going to resolve it for me. But because of the way Blooded works, it actually needs the vhost field. So this is going to be when you do the HTTP request, there's a host field that is required for this to work. So we're going to need to set that as well. And that's just going to be evalcorp.com. All right, let's look at our payloads and let's see what we want to do for a payload. I'm going to try, let's use this PHP interpreter bind to TCP. So I don't have, I'm not set up right now where I'm at for a reverse TCP shell to work. So I'm just going to try a bind TCP shell. So let's see, we're going to set payload. All right, something's misconfigured here on my VM. My keyboard's acting wonky. All right, there we go. Let's check our options again. Make sure we've got everything. Everything that's required at least. So we've got the username and password. We've got the R host. That should work. It'll actually resolve it when we run it. But we do need that vhost. In this case, the target URI is just going to be in the base directory. We've got our bind shell. All right, that should work. Let's try it. Run our exploit and see what happens. And then once we get in, let me see if I can remember where the next stage is. Let's see, blooded, yeah, there we go. That's what it was. And how'd I do that? Okay, I remember. All right, so the exploit is running. And it looks like it has run. Right. Yeah, we're in interpreter. All right, so let's pull up a shell. Okay, so we're running as Apache. So we're Apache. Now we need to do some privilege escalation. Let's start off looking for SUID. So we're just going to look in / look for the permission for 1000. And run that. Okay, so we've got a list of things here with SUID set. So if you're not familiar with common privilege escalation techniques, not familiar with the SUID, SUID is one of the permissions available in Linux. So every file has read, write, and execute permissions for the user who owns the file, the group that owns the file, and then for everyone. So you can set those. For example, the user who owns it can read, write, and execute. The group can maybe read and write it, and then everyone else can only read the file, for example. But there's also some extra little bits at the beginning that you don't hear about quite as often, except in this context. And that's we've got the SUID, the SGID, and the sticky bit. SUID, essentially for an executable file, what that says is when you're running the file, you run it as the user who owns it. So if a file is owned by root, so for example, let's take this base 64 here. So let's do ls-l user bin base 64. Let's try typing it correctly this time. There we go. So we can see this file is owned by root. It's got this S here, so that's what this is saying. So we've got read, write, and if this was an X, it'd be execute. S means it's also execute plus the SUID bit is set. So these first three letters represent the user's permissions. The next two or next three are the group. So user is root, the group is root. So root has read and execute, and then the last are the world permissions. This is what everyone else who has access to, which is read and execute. All right, so what that says is that when we run this base 64 command, we're actually running it as root. So what we want to know is there something we can do with this command, since it has root level access, that will help us escalate our privileges? So let's go back to our web browser and let's take a look at a common site we like to visit called GTFO bins. Now this is a great place. It's got lists of binaries and different misconfigurations and things that can occur with those binaries, and ways you can do privilege escalation with them. So we're looking at base 64. We have SUID. And so here we go. So there's something we can try. So we can assign a file to a variable. We can try to base 64 that file, and then we can base 64 decode it. And since we're root, the base 64 command should have access to whatever file that we specify. So I'm going to jump right in and let's see if we can find some passwords. So let's go back to Kali. We've still got our shell. So let's say lfile equals etc shadow. So all right, so it is a little bit chilly out here this morning. My fingers are a little numb. I'm going to blame my typos on that. All right, so then we're going to base 64 lfile, and then we're going to pipe that to base 64. See, I think it was just, dash decode. See if that works. There we go. So we've got the Etsy shadow. Now doesn't look like anybody's got passwords except for Chad. So, but we do have a password hash for Chad now. So let's grab that, and I'll put that. Oops, wrong keystroke here. I gotta say, working from a Mac, this gets to me sometimes. Switching between operating systems with the VMs, the keystrokes are all different. Just want a regular keyboard, Anyway, sorry, going off on a rant there. Okay, so I've got that password. I put it in. Nope. Okay, I thought I'd saved it. Let's go back and copy that. And we will paste it into our file here. All right, let's save that. All right, and then we're going to run John the Ripper. So just very basic, calling John, specifying a word list. I'm going to use the Rocky word list again. So again, that's a word list that comes with Kali. It's a very large word list of like some of the most common passwords that are used. And then we're using the file. I just save things to chad.pwd. So we can run that. Doesn't take very long. It finds a password, which is just $6. Let's try that. So we're going to do chad at evalcorp.com, $6. Okay. Am I logging into the right server? Let's see. Is not saying lit. All right, I'll have to come back to that. Let's see. What am I doing wrong here? All right, let me make sure I'm on the right box. Yeah, that's the right one. Did I spell Chad right? Yep, I did. Okay. Wondering if I am maybe pulling in some cached entries. Or maybe I was reading something wrong. Oh, get that in the right directory here. Okay, I don't know if I pasted something wrong or did something wrong. The actual hash, and some of this may have changed. Like I said, there's been people in these servers and already kind of hacking away and changed things. The actual password that is there and that should decode to actually the word password, which, by the way, you probably could have tried that and guessed that too if you were going to brute force it. But at any rate, SSH as Chad, enter password, and we're in SChad. And so, all right, so we're Chad. Now we need to escalate privileges as well. Let's do a sudo L, and oh, look at this. Chad can sudo all with no password. And now, again, I am root. So that was not too difficult. I think John was caching some stuff. I don't know if I copy and pasted something wrong. I don't know. I did this 30 minutes ago. Sorry, it's been an hour and a half ago now, and I got the right password. But at any rate, that methodology would work, and you'll get in and you'll have root on evalcorp.com. So that's another way you could have got in to that server besides using the SSH keys that existed. Now let's go back to it was DOT1. So let me switch back to my browser, and it's somewhat similar. evalcorp.com as far as how we're going to get in. So there was a backdoor that we found when we were scanning using GoBuster at backdoor.php. So this is a simple backdoor. All we've got to do is add a command to the end with a format something like this. So let's try the command that they have here. So there we go. There's our Etsy shadow file. We can try any command that we want. We could launch a bind shell from here, whatever. We can't see Etsy shadow. We don't have privileges, but look, there is an Etsy shadow.back, and from there we can get this EC2 user. And let's see if we can get that that password to crack. All right, so I've already saved this, so that should work. So if we do John word list equals, and again, I'm going to try rockyou.txt. Hey guys, I just finished the live stream, and during the stream, I made a couple of mistakes with the password cracking. You may have noticed when I was streaming this that there were a few issues. So I took a quick look at what I was doing, and I see the problem that I made. First of all, so the two passwords, there was for Chad and there was EC2 user. If we look in the .john directory and this john.pot, and I think I was just distracted with the live streaming portion of things, and I didn't even notice. But yeah, so we can actually see the passwords were cracked. So for and they were Kristen and password. Now, if I go ahead and remove, so because they were already cracked, when I ran John, it said there were no password hashes left to crack. I was expecting it to tell me which ones in that list it had already cracked, but it did not. I should have realized that it doesn't do that. But if I want to go ahead and just start over, and you can see what this would look like before, if I hadn't already cracked those passwords. So if I run this command again, now I've removed the john.pot. So that's going to be a list of passwords that you previously cracked. If I remove that and then I run John again, it's going to crack it, and we can see that, yeah, the password for Chad is password, and so that would be the correct one that would get you in. And then for the EC2 user on that other server, if we run that, we can see here the password was Kristen. So apologize for that. Just wanted to make that quick correction so you can see how actually to crack those passwords, and I will return you to the pre-recorded live stream. Fixing things live. Because as we like to say in Perch, YOLO. Okay, it worked. And once again, since I am the EC2 user, I can sudo su. And so now that I'm here, if I take a look at history, is this the right one? Yeah, there we go. There's another SSH key. So if that first SSH key didn't work, didn't get you into a server, here's another one that you could try. So that was there was a few different ways you could get in there. Now, if you got in and you wanted to lock people out, let's see, where are we? Yeah, we're still in the home directory. All you need to do is remove the appropriate entry from the authorized keys. So you see there's a couple here. and then maybe add your own way to establish persistence. So you want to establish some persistence. Maybe change the password for ECT user. Do what somebody did here. They modified the SSH config so that it won't take passwords. It has to have a key. That'll lock some people out. You can do that also on the eval corp server, so that Chad user couldn't get in. Modify sudo, remove users who don't need it, require passwords, require strong passwords, that kind of thing on the web server. Let's see, with the backdoor. Like I said, somebody had removed the backdoor. Actually, that WordPress site, there's another WordPress site on the DOT2 server. Someone did this. They removed, or they didn't remove it, but they moved index.php to like index.php_old, so it wouldn't work. And then just left the index.html, just a default index page for Apache. So WordPress wasn't working, so you couldn't use that WordPress link. They also removed the backdoor, but they left their own backdoor in a different directory that GoBuster wouldn't find. So somebody did get in. They established some persistence. They kind of cleaned some things up so other people couldn't get in. So congrats to whoever did that. That was a good tactic. And let's see. Sorry, my mind just went blank. So I was up late last night. Friday nights is tabletop gaming, and we usually go from like 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. So every other week, I'm a little tired when I'm doing these. All right, so that gets us into eval corp, that gets us into DOT1, that gets us into DOT2. I mean, and with those SSH keys, we can get into several others. The version of GitT, I believe that also had a vulnerability. So that's something I'll put together a proof of concept for, so we can look at that next week. We can look at the WordPress vulnerability. Another one that I think some people saw and had used, somebody told me they saw it, but then they had to go back to work because we were doing this in the middle of the week. But there were a few servers running pure FTPD that had a specific version that was only available for about a month back in 2012, 13, 14, somewhere around there. I don't remember the exact date, but somebody had actually uploaded a backdoor into the public or the official repo for pure FTPD. Basically, when you log in, you just type the words "help acid bitches" and you have root. So there was a root level exploit on a few servers related to that. Oh, one other thing. This is what I wanted to mention. So besides the targets that were related to eval corp, so there was evalcorp.com, and then there were 8 gaming servers, so a total of 9. Well, I told you there were 10 servers. The 10th one was the Quirky Falcon. So I've used Quirky Falcon before on a different CTF. And we had a bit of fun with that. I didn't fire the server up, so I can't show it to you. But let me show you what happened. So when I used a Quirky Falcon on a previous CTF in the past, so it's a quirkyfalcon.net. I used it as a source. As one of the servers, but what I didn't actually do, I didn't register the domain name. There was no DNS. Based on the other information you had an IP address and you had this host name, but it didn't actually resolve. I kind of wanted to see what would happen, and what happened is someone did register Quirky Falcon quickly, and it redirects to a Rickroll. So that was fun. But I mentioned that we had this Quirky Falcon. I told everybody at the beginning that DNS would not resolve. And so what do you do with that? Well, it's okay. It's not running on here right now. But there was and again, we did this in a previous CTF as well. Let me see if it's, there we go. So there was this, let's just launch it. All right, if you looked in your process list, you would see this YOLO-D. If you looked at open connections, you would see there was an attempt to connect to a server on port 6667 by YOLO-D. So port 6667 is IRC, and we have an IP address here. Now, also, if we look, if you don't know this, if you have, essentially, you can overwrite the public DNS resolution of any host name locally in the Etsy host file. If we took a look at Etsy host, and this was on all the servers, you would have actually found the IP address for quirkyfalcon.net. So that's another server. We'll take a look at that. All of these servers had this Perlbot running. So let's we'll take a quick look at that. We'll explore this much more later. And I just reused the same script that we used from a previous CTF. All the names in here are Game of Thrones themed, not Game of Thrones, excuse me, wrong fandom. Wheel of Time. So Wheel of Time, it's a book series. It's about 14 books. It's a good book series, one of my favorites. I've read through it a couple times, and I was reading through it last year when I was writing this. And so as at Perch, we like to use, in the research team, we use bird names for some of the adversaries that we discover. And like we've had, what was it, Angry Duck, Curious Magpie. At any rate, we have a name generator, basically adjective plus bird, and we find something we like. So we came up with Quirky Falcon. We used that. We kind of did a little write up on that, and used that domain name. And since one of the characters in Wheel of Time, this Fail, she is married to Perrin, and Fail in Old Tongue means falcon. So since we came up with that name, and I was reading the book, I thought, hey, she's the Falcon. We'll use that. So I use a bunch of Wheel of Time themed names. At any rate, so it creates a list of masters, and this is who can essentially who can control the botnet. So they have to actually be authenticated as an opper. We'll look at that later. This is the channel you log into, and then the server. So it's doing it by IP address. But we've already saw in Etsy host that would be the Quirky Falcon server. If we go through this, and we'll explore this later, but it kind of shows you the commands that you can run. So if you were to IRC to that server, it's not up right now, but at the time it was. If you IRC'd into that server, and this is where reading the source code would have come in handy. So you can see the list of masters. So you would want to be one of these users on the IRC server, and you would want to be authenticated as an operator. So that's where some brute forcing and some research would kind of come into play. So again, this is looking up Perrin and Wheel of Time. You would see that his nickname is Golden Eyes, and so the password for Opper was Golden Eyes. And so if you logged into the IRC server as Perrin, you authenticated with the password Golden Eyes, then you would have admin control over the bots, and that would be another way to get into any of the servers, because it was running as root on the server. So you could essentially use that for shell access, and you can see here that shell access is turned on. So with the proper commands, you could actually just run whatever you wanted to as root on any of the servers if you got into the botnet. So that's another easy way that you could have gotten in if you followed the breadcrumbs and got to that. So that's all I've got time for today. Just wanted to go through some of the easy things over the next few weeks. I'm going to put together the rest of the proof of concepts and kind of walk through all the different challenges on the servers. There were several that repeated. So you saw the SSH keys was used on multiple servers. The botnet was used on multiple servers. There were some that already had a bind shell just sitting there waiting for somebody to log in. There were several similar type of privilege escalations where I think the base 64 or find. Some of the things would let you read the Etsy shadow, and then you could get a password, and you could use that to do your privilege escalation. So that's some of the things that we've done. So we'll look at some of that in the next few weeks. And I think that's it. I've already done my my big event for the year, so I'm done. No, there may be some more coming up. Okay, that link dropped off. Let me put that back there just so you guys have that. If you missed that, there's that GoFundMe link for Addie. Once again, she's 3. She's got cancer. She's doing chemo right now. If you guys, if you can and you want to help that family out a bit, you can go to that link there and help them out. So I will see you again next week. I'll have a new cigar, and we will continue going through the CTF and Cigars 2021, walking through all the challenges and all the different ways you could have gotten into those servers. If you missed it, we did live stream for 6 hours. And when I say we, it was myself. It was John Hammond from Huntress Labs, Mr. CTF himself. If you haven't checked him out, I highly recommend all of his videos. Look him up on YouTube. He's got like 10 years of CTF and hacking content, great quality stuff on there. He's a great guy. We had a lot of fun. And we played a FPS together, and I killed John Hammond. So that was fun. We played a number of video games while we talked about CTFs and old school gaming and LAN parties and that sort of thing. So that was earlier this week on Thursday. That's archived in my Twitch channel right now, so you can check that out if you want to go through and see us playing some video games. Oh, sorry, I didn't list who else was on there. Besides John, there was Dave Kleinland, also from Huntress Labs. So John and Dave both worked from Huntress. Huntress, they provided the prizes. For the prizes, we gave away a Huntress-themed humidor. So they actually had a custom-made humidor with a Huntress logo engraved on it, and then we gave away some Try Hack Me subscriptions and some Amazon gift cards as well. So that was a lot of fun. I really liked. It was Huntress came up with the idea for the humidor. I thought that was a great idea. It really kind of stuck with my brand. So that was a lot of fun. And then we also had some people from Perch. So that's where I work. I work for Perch, which has been acquired by ConnectWise. So we had some of the Perchy people on here as well. We had the rest of the research team. So that would be Paul and Stu. Paul, Stu, and myself, we make up the threat research team at Perch. And then we had some of our developers, Nick and Charles. They joined us. Let's see, I think Elvin jumped in. Elvin's one of our analysts. He works a graveyard shift, so he was free during the day, so he joined us for a bit too. We played some Among Us. We played some Assault Cube, which was one of the games on here. We played Net Trek. We were going to log into Dawn of Time, but I don't think we had time. We were dealing with some issues on the FBCTF server, and our schedule got screwed up a little bit. And then we ended the whole day with Jackbox. There's some really fun speeches that we did on talking points in Jackbox. If you want to watch those towards the end of the stream, all that is on there. It was a lot of fun. We had, I think, 265 unique viewers throughout the whole thing. We had 112 people actually register for the CTF, so it was a decent turnout. I think things went pretty well. There were technical difficulties, but that always happens. All right, I think I'm done talking for the day. This is once a week I say a lot of words, and the rest of the week I don't talk because that's my thing. So I think I'm done. So I will see you next week, and remember next time that you're playing a CTF, if you get stuck, try harder, don't panic, and always RTFM. Bye.
Cigars.